Speaking the truth.
Welcome back to the second episode of the R33 GTR Rotisserie Restoration. Come to you during these quarantine times, so the presentation is a little bit different today, but rest assured we do have some cool updates that I'm going to run through. So I've got a variety of clips from Nick at Absolute Customs which detail the work that's been done in the past couple weeks, as I haven't been allowed to go to the shop as we're all kind of under quarantine, so to speak, here in England. Nick has brought the chassis to the sandblaster, sandblasted the entire engine bay, as well as the underside of the car and the entire innards of the trunk, the boot area. So all that's been sandblasted, and then it has also been epoxy primered all over the bare sandblast metal. And then besides that, we've also gone to an extent where he started to work on the front strut tops and some rusted panels in the area. So he's working from the front of the car all the way to the back. So we'll get to the boot last, which will give us some time to source some parts. You'll see the reason why in a second. So I'm gonna kind of dub over and explain what you're seeing on screen, as some of the videos don't have any talking from Nick, but the last video, he explains quite a bit what exactly is going on. So we'll be able to show you that in full detail. So here we go. Here on the start, you can start seeing the sandblasting on the underside under the rear subframe area and the rear arches. It's pretty good. It really exposes a lot of the pitted metal and a lot of the small pinholes that you can see on the inner sill panel. As we move towards the front of the car, you can see how it cleaned up the front wheel arches, front strut tops on the underside, and exposed a lot of shoddy repair work that had been kind of laying there for us. We knew it was there in the front for sure. Into the engine bay, things look pretty clean, especially on the passenger side. That strut top is pretty nice, that whole area, and the engine bay is actually fairly decent. But he sandblasted the entire inside of the engine bay, which is really useful, and I think it's gonna lead to a really nice finish once we end up painting the engine bay, which I want to paint to match the car color, midnight purple. So that'll look pretty cool. As we move towards the back of the car, you can see some of the holes that were exposed in the rear outer sills, basically underneath the side skirt, and then into the rear arches. There's a couple little pinholes here and there, but to be honest with you, some of those panels actually look pretty good. I'm quite surprised. Here's the rough part. So the rear boot panel, it looks like there was a really big accident in that area, and really bad repairs that's also extended to the right rear quarter panel. So the boot panel doesn't even look like it's been welded in correctly, as it fits in towards basically right underneath the subframe, which you can see there, and pretty alarming. So here we got some progress. This is a epoxy primer coat that's been applied to the entire car to cover up all of the bare sandblasted metal. So this is England. If you have bare metal out for any longer than 1 week, it's just going to turn to rust, especially this kind of mild steel that they stamp these cars out of. So this whole thing would have been a giant rust bucket if he didn't apply an epoxy or some sort of primer all over it to seal the metal. So he applies the epoxy primer, and then he'll individually cut out the small panels which need to be fixed. Fix those panels, grind back where you're going to re-weld in the new panel, and then epoxy over that. So it's a kind of a piecewise way of working. Here's that back, the right rear quarter panel, which looks like it took a nasty whack, and it was all covered up, and that boot floor is as well pretty ridiculous. So here's Nick. He's going to explain a little bit more of exactly what the issues are.
So I thought I'd do a little update for Gabe on his R33 GTR, seeing as he's not going to be able to come down here at the moment and get any material for his YouTube channel. So we've got the shell back from the sandblasters the other day, and we've had everything from the bottom of the windscreen, engine bay, all the way through, round and into the boot sandblasted. We've now put it straight into epoxy primer. We don't believe in putting temporary primers on things because you just have to clean them off. So we have gone straight in for epoxy. We've got quite a bit of work to do in the back end. It's had a shunt at some point and a pretty nasty repair. So if anyone has got a boot floor for an R33 GTR, possibly, I don't know if a GTST one is the same, it looks very similar. We've got a bit of work to do on the back end of this quarter panel as well. And the rear panel needs some attention, as do all the inner arches, beam ring mounts, sills, inner sills, floor pans. So we have started cutting the car apart now. Got 90% of the cleanup done on this side, and it is pretty sound. Just a lot of surface rust inside the seams, and the reason we've gone so far in is because of this corner here, which is this panel over here, which became apparent after blasting. So we will remake the back end of that. The rest of the panels for this side are ready to go straight into epoxy. So we'll epoxy everything, and anywhere where we are plug welding, we mask up and then apply a weld through primer, copper based one. Anywhere that we are pinch welding with our spot welder, we can just epoxy the whole panel because we use a spot weldable epoxy. So we'll be doing that when we start going on the sills and the floor pan work. That'll all just go straight into epoxy. The idea of that is to give it a proper primer inside, not a single K, like a lot of people do. And that should give Gabe many years of life in this R33 shell. With a lot of things, it's all down to product selection. There's so many products out there aimed at the kind of the classic car market now, that are very, very well marketed, and they advertise that they stop corrosion, they're anti-corrosion, and all this kind of stuff. The only way to stop it is to get rid of it. Cut right in, get rid of it all, build it back properly. These products are really good at holding it back. Your painter will use them. 5 years down the line, you'll have the same problems that you went in before. So we are trying to eliminate that problem on this. So a bit more cleanup, and I will do a couple more videos as we start putting this back together to keep you entertained in this lockdown.
I thought the amount of work to pull out this little panel was staggering, but that's how Nick said you had to do it, so that's what we did. It would, I guess there wasn't any other way, but kind of dismantling that whole upper frame rail on the passenger side of the car in the engine bay was what was needed. Obviously the strut tops are going to be replaced in that area too, so pretty interesting. So there you have it. That's the general update that we have for you on the car today. So it's in basically pieces covered in epoxy primer after being sandblasted. And now the real gritty work starts. So things are getting cut out, things are getting bent back into place, new panels are being sourced. I'm looking all over the place for kind of inexpensive options, because I don't want to buy a lot of new panels in certain conditions, because boot floors, for instance, it's 580 quid plus shipping for that. I'd prefer to find a car that was being cut up and just pull a panel out of there for 100 quid or something. That's going to be the more cost-effective way of doing it. If I don't need a new panel, it would be nice, but you know, with all the uncertainty economically here, I don't want to overspend because I might not actually have it in a couple months. So but anyways, if you like these updates, give me a comment, let me know, give me a thumbs up, share with your friends, see what you know, let me know if there's other people out there that are doing similar rotisserie restorations to what I've undertaken. It's pretty ridiculous, but I think once it's done, which is going to take a long time, but once it's done, it's going to be pretty impressive. So I hope you all like it, and stay tuned for
The truth.